international community. Those allegations that have been brought against us, that in some quarters have in fact been accepted as a reality. We're going to take the time, sir, to address those. And I beg your indulgence. Mr. Chairman and members, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Liberia, TRC, distinguished ladies, gentlemen, I appear before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Liberia, the TRC, under less than desirable circumstances. Always make the best of your lot, my deceased grandfather once instructed and advised that has served me well over the years. Today, I appear before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Liberia, dispirited and apprehensive. Dispirited because I had hoped the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Liberia would exercise utmost prudence in the conduct of this vital national endeavor, reconciliation and healing of this ruined nation state, now dubbed failed state. Unquote. I am apprehensive that our collective wisdom as a people, in search of honest introspection and peace, might have yet once again missed the mark. This indeed is troubling. I appear before this Truth and Reconciliation Commission not out of fear of its published threats and campaign of smear and disinformation against me. I appear before this commission to vindicate the many distinguished personalities, including members of my family, unfairly smeared by the conduct of some members of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Mr. Chairman, I seek not confrontation, for that will prove counterproductive. I seek reconciliation. I appear to freely and honestly express my views and participate in this national venture. Most importantly, I appear to set the record straight for future generations unborn. In so doing, I beg your indulgence as I intend to speak frankly, honestly, and freely without fear or favor. I will make personal references to incidents in our history because, as you know, history is personal. I make this observation based on the following. In a press statement issued by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, dated 26 November, 2008, Chairman Verdier of this commission was quoted to have said, and I quote, George Bowley was head of the Liberian Peace Council. He is a person of interest to the commission. End of quote. In a subsequent publication circulated around the world via internet, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Liberia named me, George Bowley, with 12 others as perpetrators or alleged perpetrators who have been invited but refused to appear before the TRC in response to various forms of human rights and international law violations ranging from murder, massacre, rape to forced displacement, etc., levied against them. The publication further states, this is the TRC last call for these individuals. These individuals are required to call the TRC offices on 9th Street between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. daily from December 1 to December 17, 2008. This is the TRC release of December 1, 2008. Quoted. I was shocked. Immediately I got over the shock of this rather misleading and untruthful information. I placed a telephone call to Chairman Verdier on December 30th, 2008. Chairman Verdier then informed me that the TRC's public hearings were extended to February 15, 2009. I informed Chairman Verdier I had received no invitation or citation to appear at the TRC public hearings, and that the published information about my refusal to appear before the TRC was most unfair and definitely misleading. I then gave Chairman Verdier my home address in the state of New York and my telephone number, with the view he would advise me in writing of a time and place as previously stated in public utterances by me to appear at the TRC public hearings.
Ibrahim, my brother would be called Bokai Abubakar. So we knew where we came from. But other brothers had seen the contradictions, so they came back. This system is not right. I do not have to be a Mr. X to be accepted. I'm educated. I do not have to join the Masonic craft to be somebody. I will go a step further and say, I don't have to be a member of a particular church or marry into a particular family to be somebody. This is my country. And people must be promoted on the basis of merits. There's nobody's farm. It's not your farm. It's your country. It's my country. And the same way you are passionate about a country, I too am passionate about my country. And if you institute tyranny, as the nationalist and patriot, it's my duty to oppose you. And that we will do. Some people, in an attempt at demonization, refer to us as recircle politicians. I said in a speech, insofar as injustice is recircled, we'll be around, we'll be recircled. Insofar there is injustice and poverty, we'll be around, we'll be encircled. Because we have to fight against this. If we must build a society of cohesion, a society of unity, we must begin to respect every man and woman, irrespective of where they come from. No matter who they are. You cannot claim any special right to the soil because your father was from Morovia, grew up. Your symbols, a young brother said to you, look at your symbols. Look at your symbol. We've been saying it for years. Years. You don't want to meet in the National Sovereign Conference and deal with this question of your symbol. They're symbols of domination. The symbols of domination. And so your falsified history must be rectified. And people say, but the history has not been written. It is not that it has been written, it's that you have not read the history. That is the problem. You've read the history that you want to read, that they want you to read. There's a lot of history out there which deal with Liberia and the crisis in Liberia. The problem of identification. Who are we? And let me say something. It's just about a joke. I was saying to a brother in Nigeria, I said, you know, the war is terrible. It's terrible. But you know, there's something positive. Many of our people especially from our so-called upper class. They have come to Ghana, Nigeria, they've gone to Sierra Leone, Guinea. I said they now realize that civilized, so-called civilized, educated women from the upper class wear African costume. They feel proud. I say in my country, they thought only market women wore these things. Before they stopped, they went to the national functions, burning heat, gloves, bowler hat, coat. These people, I said to him, these people never thought they were African people. They never thought they were African people. That is your history. So examine your history. See the crisis that you developed. And your tragedy is that your fathers and forefathers, most of them were not courageous enough to confront the problems. So they threw the problems onto the lap of their children. And their children inherited the problems, like Talbot and others, who inherited the problems. But whether, I can tell you something, do or no do, Moja or no Moja, PAL or no PAL, PPP, the way this society is organized or was organized, it was just a matter of time. Just a matter of time. That's when we came in.
Thank you. Now, against the backdrop of what has been said, and I have reference to what you referred to earlier, but Herman Cohen, former Assistant Secretary of State, against the background of what he said during the TRC hearings in the U.S., would you opine that the involvement of Burkina Faso and Cote d'Ivoire in the Liberian crisis somehow received the tacit approbation of the U.S.?
Let me say, you know, the late Ahmed Sékou Touré had said to us, A.B. Talbot had been killed together with Barney Sherman after the execution of Thomas Wesen. I had taken over the foreign ministry after Barcus Matthews. And Samuel Doe sent Podia and myself to Guinea to go and explain to Sékou Touré that the late Wesen had killed A.B. Talbot. Our delegation got to Guinea and they took us to the Palace de Peuple. Of course, Ahmed Sékou Touré, widely read, he understood so much. The first thing he brought up, he said, I noticed that your students are agitated. And the late Podia said, the students are troublemakers. Ahmed Sékou Touré said, no. When you took power, the students were rejoicing. If today they have turned against you, it's because you have changed. Students don't change, not until they leave college. You have to examine yourself. Podia then said, Head of State Doe wants me to tell you that the late Wesen, the Vice Head of State, executed A.B. Talbot. Sékou Touré said to him, Sékou Touré said, Hufei is not a man who forgives easily. He said when A.B. Talbot was arrested from the French embassy and put in prison, Hufei sent to me to ask me to intercede with Doe to free A.B. Talbot. Sékou Touré said, I sent my Prime Minister, Lassana Biogogi, to Doe. Doe said to me, there was no problem. A.B. Talbot was all right. He will go to trial. A couple of months later, the news got to French intelligence that A.B. Talbot had been executed. French intelligence then informed President Hufei-Boigny. Hufei-Boigny again sent to President Touré. He said, I've learned that A.B. Talbot has been killed. Sékou Touré said, I sent Biavogi again to Head of State Doe. Head of State Doe said, it was not true. Now you have come to me to tell President Hufei-Boigny that A.B. Talbot was killed by the late West End. And his secretary said, West End is dead, he cannot defend himself. But I can tell you one thing. We all have to die and answer to our makers. But Hugh Boyne, knowing him as I do, he will not forgive you. And so yes, when Hugh realized that there was a group willing to overthrow Samuel Doe, and it was stated at the Hague trial by one of the leading members of the NPFL that they were giving arms. While waiting for Libyan arms, they were giving arms by the Ivorian Defense Ministry. Of course, Hugh Boyne knew. And because of Hugh Boyne's connection in Paris, it is possible that he convinced the French. The French were heavily involved. He convinced the French that Taylor should be helped. We have information from our sources that the son of the president of France, of President Mitterrand, was in contact with the Taylor people. So obviously Burkina Faso, Blaise Compaoré will only be courageous to send 700 to 1,000 soldiers into Liberia if he had the tacit endorsement of the French to Hugh Boyne. Yes, now it's just possible that the French, knowing that they were going to support Mr. Taylor, knowing the connection of Hugh Boyne to Mr. Taylor and his group, and also Blaise Compaoré, it is just possible that they could have sent the signals to the Americans that we can handle this. We can handle this. And that was the problem the Nigerians had. Because the Nigerians had the potential, they had the capacity to destroy the NPFL. They were stopped at every step of the way. And they kept saying to themselves, what is happening about Liberia? Why do we find it so difficult to get a consensus to move in with full force and stop this war? Arms were coming through the Ivory Coast. So if you like, at a particular stage, because of the involvement of Hugh Boyne, because of other international actors, this whole internal rebellion became a vast international conspiracy to help the Taylor people to stop certain other forces who were perceived to be anti-whatever. So yes, I think, and I must appreciate what Mr. Cohen said to you people in America. He knows, he has seen the records, but we can only conjecture that there was a desire by certain international actors to ensure that Mr. Taylor took power in Liberia, irrespective of the fact that he was coming from Libya, which was a pariah state, with all his values antithetical to the values of certain international partners or actors. So yes, I believe that sincerely. And so obviously at the end, Mr. Taylor was given the presidency. But like all historical mirages, Mr. Taylor ended the way he did. He ended the way he did. Because this society is complex. It's complex. To rule a society, you have to understand the actors, the various forces. Why was it possible after a few years? Lurd, Model, all these people popping up. You cannot take power through guns and then intend to suppress people when they have already taken guns before. This crisis here, this crisis in Liberia was the crisis of leadership. 1997, the Americans, the French, the entire international community, through the instrumentality of Hugh Boyne and his people, even the Nigerians have conceded to Taylor that you are president of Liberia. You are president of Liberia. We deal with you. So why all this aggression? Why all these movements into other countries? What are you trying to prove? What are you trying to prove? So that was the tragedy. The tragedy was, as Mandela said recently, it's that want of leadership. You have been given power. Develop your country. Your opponents are in exile. And you are making the joke to your supporters. When I leave from here, some of them will come walking with sticks. They will be so old. Vision 2021. The man didn't have vision for 2001. He talked about 2024. But this was the reality. So it was it's a serious tragedy of leadership. And that's where we got to where we were, with more wars, So yes, Mr. Stewart, the Ivorian Shiva Bonny is dead, but of course, we paid close attention to the trial because we ourselves did not know certain things until we started following the trial. And now the puzzle, it's all coming into place. It's all coming into place. Our arrest, the killing of our militants, the killing of Liberians, all these talks in Washington, socialism, communism, only to make way for Taylor. But like they say, history poses no problem for which there is no solution.
Now, against this backdrop, would you agree with those who hold the view that Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, even the U.S., in a way, should pay reparations to Liberia for the kind of havoc that was wreaked by someone who would describe as the marionette?
You see, my brother, Commissioner Stewart, men who rule country, or women who rule country, will have to realize that politics is not a Sunday school party. The Americans have their interests to protect. They will protect their interests. It's possible they saw Taylor as having momentum. The Ivorians felt that Mr. Doe was anathema. He had killed A.B. Toba. The old man was aggrieved. Blaise Compaoré had to do the biddings of the old man. So these countries obviously gave support to Charles Taylor. All nations must realize, as they say, the fundamentals of international politics. There are no permanent friends, only permanent interests. What they did against the background of the perception that Mr. Taylor would probably be better for the interests. Now, if you talk about these countries paying reparation, I gave you a good example. Most people do not know that the Americans are spending over $250 million every year to keep the unmanned forces here. To keep the unmanned forces. The budget of unmanned in Liberia is close to $800 million. The Americans are paying over $250 million. I think that's reparation enough. Now, it's possible some people say, pay more. But you see, big nations have the interests. You must understand how you engage them. And that is why the leader must be a strategist. You must identify where there are ideas or interests of convergence. If you ask America to pay, and America say we're not paying, you going to invade New York or Washington? Blaise Compaoré. I've never been to Burkina Faso. I was a great admirer of Thomas Sankara, and I always remember his famous quotation: a soldier without political education is a potential bandit. That was Sankara. I've never been to Mr. Compaoré's country, and I hope I never go there while he's there. Compaoré has been identified by the United Nations as a seller of arms to UNITA in Angola, as a trafficker in diamonds, as one of the men who fomented destabilization in West Africa. Have you heard anybody talk about Compaoré going to war crimes or so? That is the nature of international politics. Mr. Compaoré has big backers, huge backers with nuclear weapons. Compaoré is going nowhere. That is what Charles Taylor did not realize. Blaise Compaoré has been the epic center of all destabilization movements in West Africa, in East Africa. Nobody has taken him. Nobody will take him. They were even organizing ECOWAS meeting in Ouagadougou. No, it's different. You can't force them to pay reparation. La Côte d'Ivoire, they have their own crisis. They will tell you that was Humphrey Boyne, that's not us. You want to name and shame them? Do so. But what would it benefit you? Are you going to now sell the blood of your people who have died? There are over 250,000. You're going to ask for payment for the blood? Ask for payment for the blood? That they were instrumental in promoting wars? No. What we do is that we strengthen our country, educate our citizens, so that tomorrow, no army, no old man, because of his relationship with people, can invade our country, even when UNME leaves. It's our responsibility. I think to go groveling before these people, begging them, pay us reparation. Liberia is destroyed. So, other nations have been destroyed through wars. Angola, 30 years of wars. Other people have fought wars. Nicaragua, Vietnam. They are building their own country. The worst thing you can do to the memory of those who died is to say to those who were responsible, the external actors, pay us for the death of our people. You don't do that. Instead, what we do, we establish a massive monument and select a day in our history where every day we go and remind our children and their children that men died because of so and so reasons, and we must make sure that this will never happen again. That's what we can do. Let us not be beggars to those who laugh that because we were weak, underdeveloped, that they could do what they wanted to do to our country. Our duty and your duty as young men and women is to ensure that your leaders strengthen your country, empower you as young people, not to be afraid, but to be able to defend yourselves at any time. So tomorrow, these borders will not be porous. If you don't do that, and you go to Mr. Kampori, you go to the Ivorians, you go to the Americans, what they will conclude is that these poor black people are now selling blood for money. It's not blood diamonds, it's blood for money. The people have died, they are begging for money. We got gold, we got diamond, we got rubber, we got timber, we got iron ore, we got marine resources. People say we are rich. It is not reflected in the welfare of our people. We must be bold enough to say we will seize our resources and deposit them in the laps of our people. Our partners can walk along with us. And so the message we send to those is that when we strengthen ourselves and mobilize our people, if you dare come again, you'll find a united people, angry and determined that there will not be a repetition of this history. That's all.
Thank you. Now, as a prominent politician and a political scientist, how do you reckon I'm talking about the Liberian situation, how do you think the politics of the Cold War impacts regional decision-making vis-a-vis the resolution of the Liberian crisis?
Well, you see, I think it was very easy. Now, after the Cold War, it was obvious that nobody could play the card. Nobody could play the communist card. So people like the late Humphrey Boyne and his partners in West Africa decided that, of course, they will support whoever they wanted to support. But when the Nigerians came in with ECOWAS, the whole Liberian peacekeeping took another dimension. Because under President Babangida, the Nigerians were determined that the Nigerian army will not be humiliated in Liberia. They were determined. But they realized one thing, that if major powers were supporting Charles Taylor, there could only be one reason. And that was to humiliate the Nigerian army to such an extent that it would go back home, implode, and there would be a change. Because, you know, the Western powers had an example. It happened in Argentina. The military had taken power in Argentina. A very repressive military regime. And when the Western powers wanted to destroy the Argentinian army, its legitimacy is simply went into the Falklands. When they got into the Falkland Island, they were beaten back. When they went back home, the people said, this is an army that cannot even defend our sovereignty. So, what legitimacy do you have to rule? The army had to go back to the barracks. The Nigerians were always aware of the Argentine example, that if they were not careful in Liberia, they would be shamed into withdrawing, and Mr. Taylor will crown his victory with the defeat of Nigeria, which would then have to deal with the problem of Nigerian citizens demanding a civilian rule. And I'm saying here, what obtained here was that the French, and I make bold to say, the French have always been suspicious of the Nigerians in West Africa. Because for them, they felt that the Nigerians had this policy of PAC Nigeriana, like the Americans have theirs of PAC Americana, or PAC Britannia. That the Nigerians had this whole thing of a PAC Nigeriana. The Nigerians were also very wary of the French, because France was the only major country that supported the Biafrans in the struggle for secession. France was the only country. So the Nigerians were very hesitant that with the French involvement to Hifeboini, they had to be very careful, because France would never allow the defeat of a group supported by Hifeboini in Liberia. And it's possible, it's just possible that Abacha got the signal and decided that Nigeria should cut its losses and leave, with power given to Mr. Taylor. Yes, the regional configuration of power at that time favored Hifeboini because he had serious backing. And he exploited that. You can't blame him. You can't even blame Mr. Taylor. And the whole idea of the Cold War at its end, if you were to bring up the question of communism, the Americans felt that this system was dying. Any African who toyed with this system was crazy. And I still believe in my heart's heart that one reason why the Americans probably abandoned Samuel Doe was when he started dealing with Nicolae Ceausescu of Romania. The Americans felt that this was the end of the Cold War. The Soviet system was imploding. From within, it was being destroyed. Ceausescu was the last remaining Stalinist communist, and he was moving around to solidify his position. It was the time that Samuel Doe brought him here, gave him a doctorate degree, brought in thanks from this man. And for the Americans, Mr. Doe didn't understand the nature of the international struggle. And so yes, those who promoted Mr. Taylor and helped him had a conjunction. The whole idea of the regional grouping of power under Hifeboini, and also the fear of certain international actors that no pro-communist or pro-Russian or sympathizer of any communist will emerge in any West African country. This was the age of the American century. I think that's what Mr. Cohen was trying to say. This was the age of the American century. And so therefore, Mr. Doe fell victim to forces he did not understand, that he could never comprehend. Ditto for Mr. Taylor. With the fall of communism, there was no more. He tried several times to pin this exile as communist sympathizers. But he failed to realize with the end of the Cold War, another boogeyman had emerged, and that was so-called Islamic fundamentalism, which the Americans realized. And poor Mr. Taylor, out for business, probably decided to deal with elements who came looking for diamond without him realizing that these people were members of Al-Qaeda. And so therefore the Americans felt that, but this is a dangerous young man. We gave you power. We allow you to rule. We've been interacting with you. And you bring Al-Qaeda to Liberia? These were the people who blew up the Twin Towers in America. And at the Hague, some of the people said, yes, we knew them. We saw them. These are pictures the FBI put out. These are the people Mr. Taylor was dealing with. For the Americans, that was unforgivable. like Taylor was strange.
Now, as a follow-up, given what you said, what would you say were the perspectives of other players in the sub-region like Sierra Leone, Ghana, and how did such perspectives shape or help to influence the outcome, the final outcome, as we saw it, or the developments in the sub-region, so to speak?
Well, let me start with Sierra Leone. That I know a lot of. I had revealed to the Sierra Leone authorities because I found out in Tripoli that Fodisako was very close to Taylor. And I had spoken to the ideologue of the RUF, a fellow called Professor Cleo Hansis. He's dead now. The one who gave me the RUF manifesto in '87. And I had told the Sierra Leoneans that there's going to be trouble, that these guys are coming called the RUF. I have a problem with them because they are dealing with this man called Taylor. So for Sierra Leone, they had to stop whatever was developing in Liberia. So of course, Mama was predisposed to ECOMOG being formed when we realized that it would be necessary to stop any regional confrontation. The best solution would be to go in as a force. In the case of Ghana, the Nigerians felt that they would go into Liberia. They had a responsibility as a major player to stop the crisis in Liberia. And so they wanted to convince the Ghanaians to go. That the Nigerians felt that if they had come in alone, it would give the impression to the French, the Ivorians, that they were stopping the interests of certain people. So they convinced the Ghanaians that if we want to help sister African countries, we have to go as a force in there to make sure that we separate the belligerents, the fighters, bring these people to discuss. It was based on that President Momo offered his country as a base for the Nigerians who had gone in with the 1,004 men force when they couldn't stop in Monrovia. The Ghanaian government was convinced it was necessary to come into Liberia to help. They sent forces too. The Guineans who were ready to come to those aid, but had been told that they will have to fight a war, probably with a backing against Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso, they decided to join because it was in the interest to ensure that no pro-Burkinabe or pro-Ivorian regime took power in Liberia. And if you notice, President Dawda Jarawa of the Gambia was then the chairman of ECOWAS. Every Francophone country refused to be a part of the initial ECOMOG. The four countries, except Guinea, the countries which were involved, Nigeria, the superpower of West Africa, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Gambia, and the one country which still maintained its position like Sékou Touré did, that it would be non-aligned and neutral. These 5 countries. Ivorians refused to come. Of course, Burkina Faso was not coming. The Senegalese refused to come at first. The Togolese said they were not coming. Benin said they were not coming. So the ECOWAS force was only the force of English-speaking West African country plus Guinea. And so the reality then was that you had to now get into Liberia by hook or by crook. And once Samuel Doe sent out the message that he would turn over power to anybody except Charles Taylor, an interim government, as I said, was formed. And ECOMOG responsibility was to bring in the interim government, install the interim government, divide the belligerents, separate them, go for a peace conference, and try to resolve the Liberian crisis by taking very little casualties. But you know the history. Taylor refused, established his own government. He said he was not a gun for hire for any politician, and he will fight until he got to Monrovia, fighting in shore, with the backing of his key supporters, the Libyans, the Ivorians, the Burkinabes, and as we have found, others who felt that they could exploit the situation. So we come back again to political opportunism. Why they exploited the situation, why they did not support ECOMOG. That is what the historians are still trying to understand. Had ECOMOG been supported at its fullest by West Africa, the war would have been over. The war would have been over by 1991-92. But there were divisions within ECOMOG, serious divisions. And the Nigerians who took the brunt, the expenses of maintaining the peace, by 1997, with the pressure from back home, they felt that it was enough. They gave power to Taylor. But that didn't end the crisis in Liberia. It was the beginning of a much more horrendous war, a much more deadly war. The consequences you all know, as many of you were here.
Now, I won't say much of a follow-up, but there were some who appeared before the TRC, well, placing blame on those who had supported the ECOWAS initiative by charging that they were the cause of the problem by forming a government while a president was still sitting in power and creating such a problem. Of course, there are those who dismiss that. What would you say?
But you see, it was very interesting because, that's very interesting. Because we were getting intelligence report. I mentioned the visit of Dr. Abbas Bundu to Monrovia. And he was executive secretary of ECOWAS. Dr. Bundu went behind rebel lines, Taylor lines. His impression was that Taylor was popular. The women had spread their lapels for Taylor to walk on like Jesus entering Jerusalem. And my famous quip to him was that, well, you know what happened to Jesus afterwards? He had come to Monrovia. He had come to Monrovia. And he had met Samuel Doe in the executive mansion. And Samuel Doe had argued that he would give power to anybody except Charles Taylor, who he condemned as a fugitive and a thief. He said that to Abbas Bundu. And he said, I am ready to move from this mansion with my feet first before giving power to Taylor. So we understood this was going to be a fight to the end. Taylor on one side, over the BBC, referring to Samuel Doe, don't mind that boy. We're not stopping for that boy must come down. Doe on the other side, refusing to accept the indignity, saying to the executive secretary of ECOWAS, who had been sent by the leaders of West Africa, I'd rather die here than turn power over to Taylor. And so, the idea of the interim government was the middle road. Doe is ready to go. He's ready to leave Liberia. If Taylor is interested in elections, let him stop where he is. Let's negotiate. This interim government can only hold power for about 1 year. It will go. It's a temporary solution. He refused. If ECOMOG had not come in, I can say something to you. It will have been a total destruction of this country. It would have been a war which would have engulfed the entire sub-region. Because if ECOMOG had not come in, the Guineans were determined to come in. Based on the ECOWAS Defense Accord, they would have come into those on those side. The Nigerians would have come in on those side. The Ivorians would probably have been forced to give more support to the Burkinabes to come in on Taylor's side. This would have been a battleground fought by proxy armies of certain international actors. Our calculation was that the interim government was the only temporary solution. Bring in the interim government. If you control 90% of the population, you control the country, then let the interim government come and then go for election in 1 year. They refuse. They refuse. And they attack ECOMOG. The war dragged on. So for those who say, if you had not come in, that again is how policemen think. If Mr. X doesn't go here, why won't happen? It doesn't. If Mr. Taylor had agreed there and then to calculate as a political strategist and say, look, the people want me. I'm popular. In Monrovia, they're saying, let the Taylors stitch everything together. People are shouting, I'm over the radio. The BBC lady told me, I said, why are you always calling Taylor? They said, Taylor is radio. People like to hear him. If you had that support, then go one step backward, two steps forward. Say, I will hold on to my position, let the interim government come. But I demand we have elections within 9 months. Why did he refuse? Who told Taylor to refuse? It was very simple. Taylor too must have heard what Samuel Doe said. And Taylor's calculation was that if he allowed the interim government to establish itself, the horrors taking place behind his line would be revealed because ECOMOG would go behind there. And once ECOMOG revealed the horror, the masses of the poor would drift down to Monrovia and election would have been lost by Taylor. That was his calculation. I am convinced, beyond all reason without, that's why he formed his government, NPR something government in Banga. As simple as that. So to those who say, if ECOMOG had not come, I say, please, if ECOMOG had not come, probably we would not have had a Liberia, we would have had arches. Because the Guinean scheme in ECOMOG, the Nigerian scheme in ECOMOG, they had the force, the potential. And probably if you say, then Doe would have been in power, who knows? Historical conjecture again, who knows?
Now, if I should digress a bit, the late Bacchus Matthews, sometime before his death, and this was right around the time when I was much talk in the air about memorializing the affecting officials, government officials who were executed, and an apology from the Liberian government for the execution of those 13 individuals. And in response, more or less, the late Bacchus Matthews had declared that he would have sought, would have come to the TRC and would have sought to make a case for reparations for those who were killed by the security forces in 1979. Would you have supported such a call? Do you think it was was it a befitting call, more or less?
But Matthews, I always say Bacchus was a tactician. He realized what he was doing. And this whole idea of reparation, I think he was trying to say, okay, here we are, at this point in history where we are now recognizing the 13. And when you recognize the 13, you are blaming me for my agitation. Let's go back to 1979. What about those who died? And let me say, I will say what the actress and singer and activist Mara Makeba said one time. She had a beautiful song praising Sekou Touré, and she was condemned by some people that Sekou Touré was a tyrant. And Makeba said, in life as in history, we have the right to select our own heroes. We must select our own heroes. For those who feel that the 13 officials were the heroes, don't begrudge them. It's good for them. But we have our own heroes. We have our heroes. Our brothers who were killed in 1979 during the rights demonstration. T.R. Bracewell, who died in Belayala. Jua Nimle, and so many others. Koli Tamba, Raymond Horace, all these people, these are our heroes. If anybody feels that they have a right to erect monument and to build law courts or so and name it after a man they consider a hero, then we say to these people, this hero of yours presided over the exoneration of men who killed a guy called Berry because he took a kidney from the shop and put in his mouth. Now, if you want to call that man your hero, we have our heroes too. We have our heroes. At the moment they are not recognized, but the time will come when the history of this country is written, they are going to be recognized. So let us don't say we want reparation for anybody. I come back to this idea of asking for blood money. These are historical realities. People were killed because these people felt threatened. They had no regards in the slaughter of these people. But we will never endorse their interpretation of who the true heroes of this country are. That's their perception. They are free to hold that perception. Let them choose the heroes. We will choose our heroes. As simple as that. Why quarrel? Why quarrel with anybody? Somebody mentioned here the case of Matilda Newport. I say to people, but when they have vacation, holidays, Matilda Newport, I don't observe holidays. Somebody said Topman birthday. I think he's buried somewhere there. They say Topman birthday, I go to work. I don't recognize him as a hero. But you can recognize him. That's up to you. If you feel he was a great president of Liberia, I never thought he was a great president of Liberia. So please, allow the people to honor their heroes. We must honor our heroes. And that is why, with all our political differences as militants, when Brother Barcus Matthews died, we walked behind his casket from APD headquarters to Tottenham Stadium. We attended his funeral, a befitting funeral for a man that the people recognize as the hero. We were not going to listen to those who will condemn because they have a different interpretation of history. Their interpretation of history is contrary to our interpretation of history. So the question of hero must not be something that we fight over. Like they say, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. Another man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. I know my heroes. I follow my heroes. I honor them. Others, why they're celebrating the birthday of the heroes, I don't go. I don't honor them. And what is so interesting, nobody has asked me the question of why I will not go to a law school which has been dedicated for such and such a person. Nobody dare ask me that question. I'm nobody's servant. I'm a public servant. Nobody will say to me, why didn't you leave your house and go and put a flower on Topman's grave? Nobody dare ask me that. And as long as you respect me and you respect my perception of who my heroes are, you can go ahead with your masquerade. It's up to you. And so we live and we all decide to work together for Liberia. The question of heroes, a question is just like food or the wives we choose. It's a matter of individual taste. The food you eat, the food I eat, our taste. The women we married, our taste. As simple as that. And that's how the whole question of hero is. And what we must never allow, those who were part and parcel of that which we resisted to make us feel guilty. We can never be considered victims.
Finally, as we engage in the TRC process intended to contribute, so to speak, to lasting peace in Liberia, from your perspective, what would you consider as potential threats to peace and stability in Liberia and in the sub-region on the whole?
Commissioner Stewart, I was asked to talk on 79 to 203. And, you know, it's a very tough one for me simply because whatever I say now will be interpreted as coming from the National Security Advisor. These are modern times. I think I will just be superficial as much as possible.
You don't have to answer if you...
No, I would be superficial, very superficial. I think there's a question of the democratization of the space that we have here. We must find a way whereby the next political dispensation we can decentralize power as much as possible to the rural areas. The involvement of the people in the selection of the leaders at the various levels, the electing officers like superintendent and the local parliaments. Every county has its own local parliament. We must move away from this idea that people who represent district represent an entire country. We must bring more people on board in the legislature. I mentioned having about 25 or 30 seats put aside for representatives of the workers' union, representative of the farmers' union, representative of the religious council, representative of the student movement. So if we go into a legislature of 64 elected representatives, we must then have about 35 or 40 representatives cutting across all tribal groupings, represented institutions. Bring people on board, more people on board. Engage the people. Our teacher Malemu Nerere taught us that in the third world, a leader does not just give instruction, a leader is also a teacher. You have to engage our people constantly. Obviously, there are people who feel serious grief. There are people who feel they have been wrong. Our duty is to engage them. It's not that you change the hearts, but we engage in them. We talk into them. Regionally, steps have been put into place by ECOWAS to handle the situation, that there can be no more eruption like the Liberian Civil War, that spill over into Sierra Leone, that spill over into Guinea, that spill over into the Ivory Coast. ECOWAS has put into place mechanism to address these things. The United Nations has put in place mechanism to address these things. Locally, what we probably need before our next election is to have a national sovereign conference where representatives of all the people, the chiefs, the farmers, the students, the workers, the market women, representatives, we can all sit down and discuss for a month what is the itinerary of the march. Where do we go? After elections in our country, what then do we do to get our people involved? This is necessary because the people who resent power the most, are those who feel that they are marginalized without any attempt to reach out to them. In any society, not just in Liberia. It's a matter of calling people and discussing. Because we were getting worried. I for one was getting worried until people started saying, but we seem to be going back into the same thing. And they say, Fambula, we condemn you. Because while you're preaching, when it came to the last election, you didn't support a populist candidate. And I said, excuse me. Running a modern state is a very complex thing. You don't play with people's destiny like that. What we'll do will now empower all Liberians. I'm happy when I see the members of the legislature, brothers from among the people who are engaging the executive branch of government. This is healthy. The next election is going to be healthier because many young men will come. They now see that they can influence things in the legislature. It's going to be very competitive, and we must encourage this. That is why the newspapers, I think they have 40-something from my latest count, they come out intermittently. But let the people speak. Let them go over the radio. Let them say what they want to say. If you are not satisfied, engage them in a debate. The idea of political tolerance is to persuade people to follow you, not to brutalize them into keeping quiet. Brutalized people who keep quiet are very dangerous people. Because whatever happens, they will stand aside and see you doing battle with those who want to get at you. The more involved the people are, the more we engage them, the better. The better. So I will say, open up the democratic space. Let the people discuss. I think the Chinese said something like, let 100 flowers blossom, let 1,000 schools of thoughts contend. Let them say what they want to say over the radio, over the FM, in the Hatay Center. I spoke to the Swedish ambassador. He said, if you have one desire, what will you ask me to do? I said, I will beg you to find money and build 3 or 4 libraries in Liberia and stack them with books and documents so our people can read, so they can argue from informed perspective. So let them talk. It is their country. If they are conscious and go to the polls, if they want to gamble with their destiny, that is their responsibility. Let them answer to the children. I hope, for the sake of the Republic, my people and my children, I hope I have not gambled wrongly. So far, I do not think I've gambled wrongly. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Famler, thank you very much for the elaborate and wonderful presentation that you just made to us. First of all, I was very impressed by your depth of knowledge and understanding of the struggle here in Africa for freedom, liberty, and justice for all. Secondly, I was also inspired by your passion for what you believe. And thirdly, your honesty to accept responsibility for what you did after 1980 and not pass the buck, but rather be willing to work in rebuilding and changing things for the better. I also agree with you that historically a time had come in history where change was inevitable. Our only point of difference may be the methodology of that change. So my first question has to do with the point that, do you believe that the methodology of change can affect the influence of the change at the end? For example, we had a change that involved a violent revolution, whereas there have been other historical examples of revolution. You compare the Russian Revolution, which was the French Revolution rather, which was violent and bloody, with the so-called Glorious Revolution of England, which was more a passive but yet focused change. So, would you like to comment on that? I mean, could there have been another option for our Liberian change, or the so-called African perspective? Especially when I look at the issue that in 1982, there was scheduled an election, which made within about 3 years. And already the Chuik Party system, confronted with the global issue of respect for human rights, the United Nations, and all the other pressures, the battle against the communist forces, had sort of made, and then especially the death of Todman himself, had reached us to a point where it seemed that automatically that process of change could have come if it had been properly balanced and channeled with the right ideology and vision of leadership. So could you please give us a little discussion on that possibility or prospects?
I follow what you're saying. You see, the methodology used in terms of violence was not brought about by those who were agitating for change. I'm glad you mentioned that an election was scheduled for 1982. So I go back and say, and I quote Albert Port, who is an authority on this, since we're dealing with a hypothetical situation. So what happens if the government of Talbot had listened to Albert Port? What happened is the police had not opened fire on April 14, 1979. What happened if the Talbot government had only said, let them demonstrate, let them go ahead. They are naughty boys, Let's give them some, if I give them the police band, let them march to the streets of Monrovia. So what would have happened? I ask you, those who were agitating, I made it quite plain that we had analyzed the situation. We were focusing on an election of 1982. And we had our forces in place. We knew that, and we were being very practical politicians. The leader of our movement, Dr. Tipote, was from the southeast, had grown up in Monrovia. On the other side, Dr. Reverend Tyre was from Nimba County. This was an amalgamation of the Cry and the Mendemel group with a scattering of people from Monrovia who believe in our politics, who felt there was a need for change. Like the young men and women who had gone to the Bikiana Congress of the Tui Party and had demanded that certain changes be made within the structure of the Tui Party to reflect the ethnic balance of this group. So what would have happened if the Tui Party had listened to Alba Port and refused to have a confrontation to show that it was in power? What would have happened? It's possible that there wouldn't have been a violent change. It is possible that Mr. Tolba would have retired in 1982 after presiding over in elections. And let me be bold to say, it would have been possible that Moja would have won a free and open election, and the process of social transformation would have continued, and there wouldn't have been any bloodshed. So you see, historical hypotheses can be very fluid. They are volatile. What are we talking about here? We're not talking about young men and women who consciously say we need violence. Although some of us had read Hegel, we understood lordship and bondage. We understood the classics. We had read The Force of Violence in History by Frantz Fanon, Bismarck, The Politics of Iron and Steel. We had read all of that. But the Liberian society was not developed to that level. I think what sparked this gamble for the winning of support was the fact that PAL was taking advantage of the possibility of mobilizing people around the rice demonstration. Moja was on its way to register a political party to begin to agitate for 1982. I think with the reality in a society, the students at the University of Liberia demanding changes at Cottonton, students asking to be heard, I think the panic came from within the Tui Party. Men who had not been used to this kind of confrontation, which was moderate, but any stretch of the imagination. People acting within the confines of the Constitution. No group had arms. PAL did not. When they transformed into PPP, they had no arms. Moja had no arms. I sit here, I can state categorically. So, what happened? Who introduced the question of armed violence into Liberian politics? Was the Tui Party. Was the Tui Party. And after they introduced the armed violence, they miscalculated. For the soldiers they were depending on, since realized that with the guns, they could go one step further. They could take power. Why they brought us in? Because they were looking for legitimacy. We are the people agitating for democratic transformation. We were the people on the line talking about opening up the democratic space, allow the people the right to choose their leaders. My movement, Moja, had even gone to the extent of putting forward Brother Sawyer as a mayoral candidate. We wanted to test the system to see whether they had in place the mechanism for free and fair elections. Of course, they aborted the elections. So, yes, it would have been good. It would have been good if, of course, we did not have the violent response. If we had leadership materials that realize that in dealing with aggrieved people, you can use water cannons. You can use pepper spray. You don't have to use live ammunition. When you put the people's children in the mortuary and they see the dead bodies of the children, they only pray to God that your time will come. That's all they can do. So I throw the question back to the learned commissioner. Do you think the methodology of the TUI party moving towards election, the transformation of the regional and international system, do you think that if the leadership had exercised the tolerance, the patience and the understanding, it could not have handled the demonstration and save us from the tragedy that we experienced? If this was an enlightened party, if this was a party of men who were conscious of their responsibility to society, why the show of force? Why the show of force? What did you want to demonstrate? What did you want to demonstrate? The various wars you fought in this country were different wars. You were successful, yes, but this was a different time in history. So what were you trying to show? It was their desire to show that they could control power. And let me say this. I remember very well, after the rice riot, there was this talk against Mr. Talbot by certain elements of the oligarchy of the TUI party that he was weak. He was not decisive enough. And the son of one of such men said to Dr. Zamba Liberty, my father says Talbot is weak. What we need to do is to carry out a massacre or a few of these rabble-rousers, noisemakers, and we can hold this thing for our children for the next 50 years. So I'm convinced that they were trying to prove a point. That this agitation for them was not confrontational. It was annoying because of the arrogance. So they would teach these upstarts a lesson. They would teach these jigger-fleas a lesson. Sons and daughters of peasants, how dare you request to have a share in power in the republic? This was the mentality. And so go out there, shoot them, bury them. They're poor people's children. They don't even have money to go to funeral homes. Who's going to bother with them? So you came out and you killed people. Once you address the political issue by violence, you were yourself in the eye of the storm. And that came a year later. How do you blame us for that? How do you blame those who are agitating for the rights of the people to vote? We didn't bring the soldiers on the streets. We didn't train the soldiers. You did. You did. And that is why a leadership must be wise. A leadership is not by only by dressing in white, waving a stick in your hands. That's not leadership. It's in understanding the tempo of the society, where your people are going, what they believe in. And I am convinced, beyond all reasonable doubt, and I say this here with all sincerity, on the morning of April 14, 1979, if Mr. Talbot had said to Mr. Alboport, I will accompany you to these people. These are children. These are little boys. What do they understand? I will accompany you and I will discuss with them. And what I will do, they say they can bring rice for so price, I will give them $10,000. Let's bring rice, let's see. Oh, you want to demonstrate? Go ahead. Go ahead. But if your supporters behave unruly, you are going to be irresponsible. That would have been it. It would have been it. A brother said, yeah, well, probably they should have called us and given us jobs. No, Moja were not after jobs. We wanted power to transform the society. That's why we're fighting for the elections. So I'm saying here, it would have been a good thing for all of us to go to our churches, to our mosques, to our schools, to our homes, and nobody gets on the street, and there will be peace. History does not give people the luxury of deciding which action to take. If you blunder in history, sometimes you pay dearly for your blunder. And this was happening to the TUI party. Now, if you ask me, do you regret the TUI party falling from power? Is there a hungry man who ever regrets the opening of a store for free food? Politically, we'll have to do more study of the TUI party. more study of the TUI party. So to the Honorable Commissioner, I say, I understand your argument about methodology. I would have rather the TUI party had wiser men, or the TUI party had listened to the young people at the Buchanan Congress, had carried out the necessary changes, had embraced the people of this country. And if Mr. Talbot was bold and decisive enough, he would have thrown his lot with the people and not be dragged into the depth of conservatism by the old guards who wanted no change, who were not in favor of change. So if you like, Mr. Talbot was a sacrificial lamb. In history, we do not recognize good intentions. Practical deals are what matter, not good intentions. You can be Jesus Christ. It's not for nothing he hasn't come back after 2,000 years. Good intentions are one thing. Practical reality is another. Mr. Talbot, for some people who says, Mr. Talbot was a good man. He had good ideas, good intentions. Poor Mr. Talbot. After Tubman, history did not give you that luxury. Did not give you that luxury of keep on believing in good intentions. The people wanted transformation. If you were not about to accommodate the wishes, Mr. Talbot, you had to be a sacrificial victim, your own people. And the people will show no sympathy, and they show no sympathy. Please, please, for the young men and women who are part of the TUI party, I think you have to do a serious introspection of the shortcomings that brought us to where we are today. We wanted elections. We are Democrats, even we are revolutionary Democrats. Like those you believe in America, the founding fathers. We are Democrats. We wanted elections. And I said to you, yeah, we were convinced that election in '82, we could have won such elections. But it was you who thought you could gamble with violence. You gamble. And you know what happened to gamblers? Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. Serious, you lost. You lost. And that explains our tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you. In summary, I understand that what you're telling me is that we regrettably lacked righteous leaders at that transitional point. Because just as you said, why didn't Talbot or the TUI party make a change? They couldn't have. They were filled with the inertia of their history of 100 years of selfish rule. So the change had to come from those who were making the initiative to change. They should have had the wisdom to know better. Like you said, Mr. Matthews maybe didn't have that, and he was naive in just trying to approach a system with people who thought, where he thought they would have just, naturally given up. But that was a naive approach. But others like yourself and others who have that understanding of the historical struggle somehow would have felt there should have been an understanding and a clearer plan. Because if somebody else even had offered the sacrifice of Talbot, let's say he became a sacrificial lamb, but somebody else offered that sacrifice, the transition into a peaceful Liberia would have been smooth if it had not been for the fact that you take someone from a difficult environment full of resentment and concern about being not given any hope in life, and you put that person in a position of power and seat. It's not easy. So that was just my thought of reflection when I asked that question.
But Commissioner, let me say something about that. And it's very interesting. We must not put on the blinkers of policemen. It was not Talbot, he was symbolic of a system. He represented an oligarchy. And what I've been trying to say to you and others is that you say, me, myself, Oboyman Fambule. This was a man who was demonized. There was not a time when I was even called, or any of my people, to say, can we discuss about the future of Liberia? We were hounded. Security people in the classroom, not to listen to our lectures, but to hear information. Now, if these people were suffering from historical inertia, they couldn't move, then probably we should ask ourselves the question. If they couldn't move, then what gave them? What gave them the audacity to feel that those who were on the street agitating could be silenced with guns and bayonets? It's a simple question. The people were paralyzed. So what gave them that gall? Well, I mean, what boldness? You can say one thing you don't want to say. They were not naive. They were probably politically stupid, or they were so arrogant that they felt that after 100 years of putting down protests, they were capable of doing it. And let me say this. There were people in a society who kept preaching. I don't agree. Don't even look at the political actors. The man who was right here, Reverend Tim Reeves, I listened to his sermon every Sunday from the time I came home in 78. This noble man, using his religion, was talking against the injustice in the society. Other religious leaders all over, were preaching, listen to the people. You, Mr. Talbot, you are a religious man yourself. You know your Bible. It's like the story I heard of a man who was deeply religious. He went swimming. Always worship God. This man went swimming. And he had a cramp. He was drowning. And then the man came with a speedboat. Said, no, get on the speedboat. Get on the speedboat. He said, no, I believe in my God. You know, Jesus walked on water. I will get out of this place. You go. He's struggling in the water. After 5 minutes, a helicopter, they threw down the ladder. Get on. He said, no, go. I believe in my righteous God, and things will be all right. When he looked, a very strong man came out swimming. He said, hold on to me. He said, I don't want you. My Lord will protect me. So the man drowned, and he went to heaven. He said, God, you know, I worship you all the time. I pray. I go to church. I pay my alms. I was drowning. I call on you. You never rescue me. The Lord said, I sent a boat. You drove it away. I sent a helicopter. You drove that away. I sent a strong man. Don't you understand that I help those who help themselves? Here was Mr. Talbot, a graduate of Cottington, I think, an educated man, in relationship with Ahmed Sekou Touré of Guinea. Here was the man who was traveling around Africa, who understood what was happening in Africa, because his government, like Topman, provided passports to African freedom fighters, like Mandela and others. Here was a man who understood the word. He had young technocrats around him, brilliant men. On the other side, religious leaders, saying that we're listening to the cries of the people. On one side, these so-called people they call noisemakers, agitating. And you are telling me that these people did not understand what was happening in society? No, I think they understood. They understood. But you know, there's a problem with arrogance. Arrogance makes you feel superhuman. It makes you feel that you know everything. And you know what they say? Pride goes before a fall. Pride goes before a fall. They had the opportunity. Go, young people, go and read the resolution from the Barca Congress or the TUI party. See what the youthful members of the TUI party stipulated in that document. Why did they not listen? Let me tell you a simple story. We were monitoring very keenly the Buchanan Congress. We said the TUI party can pull a fast one on us. They can come out with something that will take the rug from under us. All they had to do was to make Jackson Doe Secretary General, take Edward Casserly, gave him a major position, take James Bagbe and all these people, put them in there, and say to the people, we have included the people's children. You cannot be on the outside and say to us, we are a little clique. We waited We waited, and then they came with the announcement. Secretary General, Mr. X, Morovia, Monserrato County. Treasurer, Mr. X, Monserrato County. This person, Monserrato County. We look at each other. These people have just dug their own grave. They can't win no elections. So it was not us. We were opposition. We were opposition. We could not say to Mr. Talbot, do these things, because they won't listen to us. Some of the smartest young men from the University of Liberia, very smart men, they were called to the mansion. And one of the TUI party members looked at these young dynamic boys. He said, you are questioning us? Who are you? And you over there, who's your father? The poor boy called some name, somebody from Lofa. He said, look at this irresponsible jigger flea. You are the people who are demanding. This was the attitude. And we hope and pray that no leader or no collection of leaders will emerge in this country with such arrogance. We hope and pray.
Thank you. Well, unless we separate from Satan, that may not happen. But anyway, the next question. Why do you think that the Liberian people gave power to Taylor during the time of the election, knowing his track record of what he was like, as compared to, for example, yourself who ran during that time and others? What's your thinking on that?
First, let me deal with Satan.
What you say?
You see, man creates the devil in his image. And nobody has seen Satan. But we believe in our hearts of hearts, that human being can change. Nobody is born evil or wicked. Society conditions people to go certain ways. To go certain ways. I always tell young people, I've read a bit about the Cuban Revolution. And before the revolution of 1959, American mobsters, mafioso, gamblers used to go to Havana to look for little 8, 9-year-old Spanish girls. And you had all these prostitutes on the streets of Havana. That was the playground of the rich and powerful to go to Cuba. After the revolution, all these girls were put into homes. They were trained to be nurses and overseers of daycare centers. Some of them had children who were sent to school and became medical doctors. This tiny island in the Caribbean exports doctors and health workers to many countries in Africa. Man is not born bad. He's not born evil. Society must be looked at critically. Satan is who we make him out to be. Satan is who we make him out to be. And for the people who are Christians, the Bible explicitly says that you must forgive people. They are bad people. But when the system is changed, when society is changed in such a way that people are catered for, provided with skills, you probably will see something different. Some of your little boys in the streets who are selling today could just become medical doctors and engineers. You don't know. You don't know. Give them the opportunities. But let me say, the elections of 1997, the commission says, why? Let's assume, for the sake of argument, let us assume that the Liberian people voted for Charles Taylor. What was the driving force of these people? What was the motivation? It's simple. They wanted peace. They wanted an end to the war. As Taylor was saying that, I will not stop until I inherit power. The people were suffering. They wanted an end to it all. He had the largest force. He controlled a large part of the country. He had international backers. He could make peace or he could break peace. The masses of the Liberian people, war-weary, tired, hungry, were not going to listen to any idea of societal transformation. That's a pipe, for them it was a pipe dream. They wanted an end to the war. I remember talking to a university student. He said to me, you know, I don't like Taylor, but I have to vote for him. I said, so how can you explain that? You're a university man. He said, this man has taken all the resources from behind the lines. He has millions of dollars in the bank for Liberia. If we make him president, he will bring the money back to benefit us with peace. I say, you serious? You're serious? So I say in simple terms, it was the peace dividend the Liberian people wanted. Eager for peace, desperate for peace. And so they decided to sacrifice their liberties. They decided to gamble. And they say, of all these people running, Taylor is the only man who can make trouble, who can keep us running around as refugees. Let's give him the power. Let's give him the power. The same thing happened in 2003. When the war was coming, I was monitoring, and the Lord forces had reached Bourgeois Island, etc. The very people who had supported Charles Taylor, weren't they the same people singing, come down, Pape, leave with your big bologna, or something like that? The same Liberian people, those who were behind the lines of Lord, those who were behind the lines of Model, what were they doing that for? They wanted peace. The people can only thrive when you give them peace. So they went to the polls in 1997, like all rational people, and give them credit. Like all rational people. If they are given the choice, they will then do what is in their interest. And at that time, they were convinced that with Taylor as president, there will be peace. So yes, a lot of them voted for him, with the help from certain quarters too. And what did we do? We accepted the decision. Because in history, one does not force historical changes when they are not about to occur. It's like picking a green plum and putting it on the bed. Even when it turns ripe, it's still green. When you eat it, it's sour. It's the same thing with historical transitions. We started to leave Mr. Taylor to run the country and let the people see the reality. That's what we did. What we did. So I think to the Liberian people, the desire for peace, to bring up the children in an atmosphere of dignity, of work, of productivity, I think they were rational. They were rational. By going with somebody who they felt was honest enough. And they are good people. To trust somebody, they felt he was honest, he was decent enough to bring peace to them. And so that's why they went that way. And from 97, when they gave him the power, to 2003, he had the opportunity, again like Talbot, to make changes, to cater to the welfare of these people, to embrace those who felt aggrieved. He did not have to institute terror. He didn't have to slaughter tribesmen from Grangire, of course, on Camp Johnson Road, in his quest to get Roosevelt Johnson. He didn't have to molest people from Ulimo, who had gone out of the country, and then thousands of citizens fled. Men who have seen violence, who have struggled for dignity, they will not come back to you crawling on their knees. They will not. So they came back the only way, the only choice you gave them, and there was another war. So I'm saying, if these people desire peace, we must be tolerant and persuasive enough to let them have peace. If we want elections, let's go to the elections. If we do not win, it is not because the people don't understand our language. Probably because of the rational instinct. They decide then and there to go another way. It is our duty to constantly engage them. For to lose faith in the people is to lose faith in the destiny of the very nation that you want to run or you want to rule. So let elections come. Those who don't win, prepare for the next election. Prepare for the next election. The time is drawing very near when I will have to leave a political office. And I say to people, I hope my people will probably give me the opportunity to serve in the Senate as an old man, because As long as I am not crippled, God forbid, I hope I can serve my people. But the time is coming very soon that I've played my role and I won't be able to accept political appointments. I've passed that stage. I'm an old man. I'm an old man. Most of you will probably not even guess my age because people assume, some people think it's my father. No. I just celebrated my birthday, July 16, 1949. That makes me 59 years old. I'm an old man. The time is coming when I have to leave. I do hope that these years of struggle, I've managed to enlighten some people, and these young men will come after us to carry this struggle to its logical conclusion.
Thank you again. That's very well put. I hope, though, that we have learned that he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. The next question is, who do you think, or have you come to understand who the U.S. support, who was giving that U.S. support to Kuempa? Because you gave us a very beautiful analysis of the fact that your alternative plan to him was a political approach, where there could be a joint party created where he could be carried on that platform. But somehow, because of the opportunity that came to him for the support to use the military strategy, he chose to follow that side. So I know, of course, you may want to not withhold names, so I don't want to go into detail. You feel that it's delicate to answer.
No,
you
sorry,
please leave that alone.
I will answer. So, But first, let me deal with this biblical saying the commissioner mentioned. He who lives by the sword should die by the sword. That's what the commissioner said. And let me say, my reading of history does not convince me. Does not convince me. The Bible says the children of Israel had to fight wars against the Philistines. All the great generals of the Bible, Jeremiah, Gideon, all of them were great generals. In Israel today, all the great leaders of Israel have been generals. They have fought for the survivor. The sword has got double edges. It can be used to protect, it can be used to harm. It depends on who holds the sword.
That's why we all died.
Mr. Commissioner, from the time of antiquity to the present, nations have fought wars. The people of Japan were the first to experience the dropping of the atomic bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Men have fought. The man you hold as a historical icon today, Nelson Mandela. As a young man, he was the leader of Nkonto wa Swize, the arm wing of the ANC. The leaders of America have protected American interests by going to war. So have the leader of Britain. Armies are created by nations to protect their interests and protect the people. These are swords. There's some American presidents, British, French presidents, who led armies into war, like Eisenhower, etc. They fought wars. Men died under their control. They lived to a ripe old age. They died and were given heroes' burial. Somebody who I do not admire in American history, Richard Nixon, the bumping of the people of Vietnam, the dropping of Agent Orange, the mutilation of thousands of Vietnamese. He lived to a ripe old age. We must not take the Bible out of context. We must not. That is the tragedy. He who lives by the sword, he died by the sword. But then, are you saying to me because Talbot sent soldiers out there, so that's why he died? I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I am a great respecter. I'm a great respecter of the people of Israel for a simple reason. This country, every able-bodied man and woman, they must learn how to shoot a gun. Like the Libyans, like the Cubans, all nations have citizen army. They don't live by the guns, they don't live by the sword, they protect themselves. People have the right to protect themselves. So your sword, if you use your sword wrongly, you have to explain to history. If you use your sword rightly, even the God you worship, were we not told as young children of the battle of David and Goliath? David, a son of Israel of the Hebrews, was the Israelites, against Goliath, this massive man coming down to fight. Did God tell David, run away, as the Bible says? No, use your swing. And David killed Goliath. That's your Bible. Your Bible says there. And so Jesus went into the temple and whipped the merchants. Jesus did not pray to the merchants. Jesus whipped the merchants from the house of his father. And you say, I live by the sword, I die by the sword. We will all die, Commissioner. We will all die.
No problem.
Excuse me, Commissioner.
No problem.
Excuse me. At my age, I've seen many years like you. It does not matter how we die. What matters is what is said about us after we die. So that, let me quote to you a famous quotation I love of the young Che Guevara. Wherever death may surprise us, it will be most welcome, provided that this our battle cry reaches other receptive ears, that other men come forward to intune our funeral dirge with the staccato of machine gun fire, new cries of battle and victory. Yes. Mr. Commissioner, all fear was banished from my body the day I walked into prison and saw my father as a prisoner. I have not known fear since. You only have to ask those who struggle with me. I don't. I fear no man but God. I bend my knees down to no man but God. Whatever, whenever it comes. As long as we're born, we must die. And this is what I have problems with people who profess to be so Christian. You pray every day to go to heaven. Why are you afraid to die?
Could you answer the question though? I like your expressions, but the question you said you were going to answer for me.
The question was?
Oh my goodness. Okay, let me go back.
No, please go ahead.
No, what I had simply asked you was, I was trying to understand whether there was any element of the support that you talked about that you could share light on, but I didn't want you to reveal something if you felt it was confidential or difficult.
No, there was nothing. I don't believe that. As the events showed, it was possible that others who wanted General Kuengpa to move in, probably they sold this to him that they had been talking to the Americans. It is possible, I don't know. But looking at the events as they unfolded, he could not have had any support from them. He could not have. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been hiding in some place on Dupo Road, wherever. It doesn't work that way. So I'm not convinced that he had the support. Frankly, I'm not convinced.
So it was just some maybe misinformation or whatever.
Well, call it misinformation, but then of course you can call it propaganda. You see, sometimes you're going into battle with terrible odds against you, and in order to psych yourself up, or people who want to psych you up, they will probably say to you that, of course, we have more support coming. Men develop courage probably when they feel that there is support. You don't want to demoralize them. So I don't think it was deliberate misinformation. And it's possible that, of course, certain big powers, the way they operate at various levels. State Department, Defense Department, this agency, that agency. You don't know who you're talking to. You have to be very careful. So people become victims simply because they take the word of an official and say it is gospel truth. It may not be. It may not be. Because people do change. And I think it's possible that happened under these circumstances.
Thank you. My next question was, can you tell us do you have any insight with regards to the shift that took place between the MPFL and the independent MPFL?
No. I have no idea, had nothing to do with those two groups. As a matter of fact, I told you the last time I spoke to Charles Taylor was September 1989 at the Mataba in Libya. I've never spoken to Mr. Prince Johnson until he became senator. I didn't meet this man, did not know him, only heard about him, watched the tapes and others. The first time we met and spoke was after he was elected by the people of Nimba County as senator, and I met Mr. Johnson. So I have no idea whatsoever, never associated with the MPFL, never associated with any of these factions.
Thank you.
Except what I've read in books, etc.
Thank you. Next, what is your view about this power sharing strategy that was used to sort of quench the struggles in Liberia, giving power equally to various fractions to sort of appease them, etc.? Do you have anything you'd like to share on that?
Oh yes, I said that to Chambers and to others. I thought it was wrong for a simple reason. You don't factionalize a country by awarding jobs to factions. When the war takes place, your duty should be to try to bring them together, to build a new nationalism. And I always recommended to ECOWAS, from the time of Abbas Bundu to Mohammed Chambers, if these people, I say take them at the word that they are resisting because they want justice and democracy. So say to them, please stand aside. Let's have an intimate arrangement. Let technocrats run the various ministries. We find some money. Go and organize your political parties. And I made it fun. I say if you Chambers were to ask the Americans for $1 million each and gave to this warring faction, the war would take place right among themselves. Stop factionalizing Liberia. I've always been against it. The Sawyer interim government was not a government of factions. I warned him. Bring in Liberian technocrats. If we say we are political people, we want to fight for power to the ballot box, then allow us to let technocrats rule the country. Let's go and prepare. If the people gave you the mandate, etc., why do you factionalize the country? You are then giving people the impression that it's right to take up arms and fight and have the central bank, the free port of Monrovia, the Ministry of Finance. Once you do that, there are other hungry people out there. They're too going to organize. They will fight. So if you watch the gradation of the Liberian Civil War, from 2 warring factions to 3 to 4 to 5, it was all about getting offices and lucrative offices. And they even got to the point where when the man of a faction was appointed head of the bank, his deputy was from another faction. You don't run a country that way. And so in this respect, I think the international community was a bit hasty. And I said to Mohammed Chambers, and I must give him credit, when I told him this was wrong, he said, but these men who are fighting, they must feel something about the country. A year later he said to me, but I'm disappointed. It doesn't seem that way. And I said, Chambers, you went into Liberia. I was trying to say to you what I know about my people and this country. And I told him a very interesting story my father told me, and I will tell you. Because it shows that if you know a scenario, a country, you can always help somebody who is willing to learn. My father said there was this brilliant doctor who had come from the United States of America. MD, neurosurgeon, PhD, medicine, hygienic medicine, all the stuff. Got to the village. His father was a reputable hunter. The old man was very good. This guy got to the village And the father called all the people from around the surrounding villages. They said, your son has come, he's made us proud, he's a very educated man. They told the old chief, you must now go into the bush and kill a deer and elephant. A lot of people are coming for the feast for your son. The old man took his gun, his hunting gun, told his son, my boy, come with me and let's go. So they got into the forest. It was going 11 o'clock. The boy said, Papa, it's been a long time. I haven't seen anything. Let's go back and tell the old man said, just wait. They started climbing a very steep hill. When they got to the summit of the hill, they saw this huge deer, running. The doctor said, Papa, look at the deer, shoot the deer. The old man kept his gun on his back, smiled. The boy said, Papa, you're a sinner, you are getting old. There was a time you would have shot one, the deer would have fallen. The people waiting for us is going to 12 o'clock. 200-300 people from the surrounding villages. There's the deer. You didn't kill the deer. Just in that time, the woman saw a squirrel, little squirrel. Took his gun, a marksman, one shot, the squirrel dropped. The old man said, my son, take the squirrel, let us go to the village. Let us go back. The boy felt very sorry. Said, my old man is old. 200-300 people, what can the squirrel do? The old man said, let's go. They started descending the hill. When they got to the bottom of the hill, the old hunter said, pick up the deer. The son said, what deer? He said, the deer lying down there. The boy looked, the doctor looked, he saw the deer. He said, but Papa, I didn't see you shoot, what happened? The old man said, my son, I've been hunting around this area. Long before you were born. The speed with which I saw that deer coming down, I knew I was going to break his neck. So you see, it is good to listen to people who understand the terrain. No, Mr. Commissioner, I always oppose all this interim information which factionalized Liberia. Because of that, I did not attend a single meeting of any interim arrangement. I did not participate in any interim arrangement. It was my way of protesting that this was not right. Our people should be brought together rather than be further factionalized by giving them offices based on factional solidarity. That was it.
Thank you. The next, do you believe that there's any place for retributive justice in a society filled with corruption that is broad spread throughout the society? And if so, or if not, then how would restorative justice apply to improve things or to solve the problem?
For Christians, the question of retributive justice, sometimes I wonder, what is retributive justice? Are you punishing somebody simply because you have the power to do so, or they have committed crimes, the laws say such? I think what we need to be focusing on here, of course there's corruption. Of course the value system of the society is lousy. You and I know that. It is all our responsibility. We reward those who demonstrate opulence, demonstrate material success. I remember something very, very clearly. Growing up in Nigeria, before Nigeria became what it is, with oil, etc., when a man was extremely educated like Nnamdi Azikiwe, when the Nigerian people want to refer to an enlightened man, they say he's brilliant like Nnamdi Azikiwe. In Ghana, when a man was brilliant, they say he's brilliant like Dr. Agri. These are people who have read at Oxford, Harvard, Cambridge. In Sierra Leone, they say he's as brilliant as David Nico. This man who at the age of 17 got a first-class distinction with 7 A's. And the late Dr. Sharif Isman. All these countries put on the pedestal men who were extremely knowledgeable, had gone to school, had done something, enlightened and wise men. In Liberia, a man is educated, he said, that man crazy, he knows too much book. It shows you. And so the society focuses on material wealth. Material wealth. And so people get into public office. People get into public office. They know what the society requires. Coming from school as a young man, a woman said to me, I hear you going to Moja. I said, well, we're trying to conscientize our people. She said, I hope you not come back to make yourself. What do they mean by make yourself? They mean to steal public funds. They mean to steal public funds. Public office is a noble office. You want to make money? Go into the private sector. Make as much money as you can make. Compete with the Lebanese. Compete with the Indians. Make money. Become a millionaire in the private sector. In the public sector, it's sacrifice. In the United States, the President of America makes chicken change compared to the President of General Motors. In Britain, a footballer like David Beckham makes about 50 times the salary of the Prime Minister of Britain. Public spiritedness must be there. You must serve simply because you want to create history. And let me say something to the young people. I know all this talk going around. Young, it's time for the younger generation. It's true. But guide against something. A young man who is not disciplined, who goes into public office, he has a lot of baggages. A young wife, a young family, girlfriends, etc. The temptation for corruption is greater. An older man who holds major public office, if he's disciplined and public spirited, he goes for historical glory and honor. Be careful. There is corruption. It's our society. You have to change the focus of people. I remember the late Samuel Doe saying, if somebody does not want to be rich, he should not stop other people from being rich. All I was trying to say, Mr. Head of State, do not open the arena for people to loot this country. That's why people were killed. I was being very objective. It's always an honor to serve. You don't have any special qualities. You don't have any monopoly of knowledge. If you're choosing for a particular position to serve, the title honorable means a lot for your people. Yes, there are corrupt people. There will always be corrupt people. And that is why at times we must exercise decisiveness. I will propose that those who loot the public treasury will have to pay the price, and the right price. Because for each time you loot the public treasury, little children will not have drugs. The clinics will not have medicine. The wealth of the country belongs to all of us. The taxes of the people belong to all of us. Your business or businesses, that belongs to you and your family. Once you pay your taxes, if you're successful in business, you build a mansion with 50 stories. If you call me, I will come there. I got friends who are extremely wealthy in Nigeria, in London. They are business people. You don't go into government to be millionaires. It's not possible. The salaries are nothing. The salaries are nothing. So until you can change. And so this is not only the responsibility of government, it's the responsibility of our religious leaders, of our parents, and all of them. My father used to say to us, you better go to school. He said, you better go to school. Because I don't think I will leave anything. I want to educate you. When I die, you must have your education. And that's all I can give you. That's all. And he was a wise man. Because I know a lot of children whose parents were wealthy and left them vast sums of money and property. They sold everything, drank into stupor. And then they go to find government jobs. And the circle repeats itself. So I think the Governance Commission will come out with some guidelines of how public servants should operate, how they should operate. And probably we need a system. Well, after every year, we have the Auditor General, somebody who will bring every minister, government official, before the table of reasoning and say, can you now tell us what you have accumulated, what you have? Let's know your salary. There's no way you can make $1,200 without a bank credit, without inheritance from your parents, and within 2-3 years, you build a house costing $200,000. But then you must teach us this magic. yes, there is corruption. And I think as a society develops, when values begin to change, people will demand the day of reckoning for those who loot the public treasury. The day will come, and we should be quite aware of that. All the young people who are planning to go into government, who want to go into public office because you think it will make you big shots, understand one thing. If your calling is business, then do business. You're smarter than all these Lebanese traders. Probably the government must find a way of finding some money to give you credit. Like the doctors go to the vocation of practicing medicine, the lawyers. So you must go like the farmers, let them be millionaires. Produce, go into business, do anything, and become rich. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. But when you enter government, if you loot the treasure, then you are a simple rogue. You're not a public servant, and that is the reality. It's a societal problem. It's not a governmental problem. It's the problem of the society, the problem of the system. And that is the fact of the matter.
So I can digest from that you're supporting more the restorative justice factor of uplifting the people, educating them, empowering them, and allowing them to live healthy, normal lives as compared to just putting criminals in prison, etc., as a retributive approach.
That has been the nature of my struggle.
Thank you.
That's what I've been saying all along. And that's what we believe in.
Thank you very much.
When human beings are treated decently, I said no man was born evil. When people are treated like human beings, they will behave like human beings. They will react like human beings. You cannot keep people in filth and the children in wretchedness and expect them to behave like human beings. It is difficult to build a society of free and equal citizens. There must be a distribution which makes people want to believe that they have a stake in the system. That's all it is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for this. Taking up your time, once you will come and share these hours with us. The TRC process is designed in such a way that we will have a time for historical review of what happened in our remote history, believing that there is an intrinsic link between the past and the contemporary history. But because of your very early encounter with the establishment, I'm inclined to ask this question. What do you make of the mindset or dilemma of a people who for the love of liberty came to establish a state, but yet still repeated those same conditions
because they were pursuing them at the same time. It's just a coincidence that chronologically the Mandingos and the Crowns were being pursued at the same time. So the quest to come back to the country and the desire to come back to the country led into them forming a warring faction together. But later on you find out that leadership was the problem. One group of people do not, a man from the Crown ethnic group said, my man, you sit down here and take order from a Dingo man? Well, we got to form our own group. And so the group divided. Now, we talk about country's involvement. Look at what happened. In Vahu, the president of Sierra Leone opened up a corridor to allow Ulimo to come in and attack the MPFL. But little did they know that the revolutionary leader from Sierra Leone with his group was already in Liberia. They trained at the Tajira base in Libya, and this group was already here. So as soon as they allow Ulimo to enter Vahu and come into Liberia, a corridor was created for Fode Sanko to move into Sierra Leone. You see, this is the type of repercussion. That's why neighbors of countries should not allow their territory to be used to launch attack on other countries. Because no telling. You think that ECOMOG that came here because they were sympathetic to Liberian cause, or they wanted to see Liberia start fighting? No. Dauda Jawara of Gambia realized that Samba Sanyang, Dr. Mani, the guy who overthrew him, was here with his Gambian special forces. So he sent troops to ECOWAS. to ECOMOG. You understand me? Guinea, Lieutenant Conte thought that Babo Sumaniga was in Liberia. A revolutionary leader also from Guinea, one who was fighting the government, was in Liberia. So he sent Guinean troops to ECOMOG. The Sierra Leoneans knew that Fodo Sankoh was here with his group in Liberia, so they sent Sierra Leonean ECOMOG. You see, the Senegalese knew that they were supporting Jawara too, and that's why they sent those Senegalese special forces that came from the Desert Storm. These are historical facts. The people who, you see, most people were not involved in this thing here. Even I look at all the members of the TRC there, none of them involved in that kind of thing here. They don't know what was happening, most of them. But it is good that the government called upon them. They are respectable citizens, qualified, and the government chose them to represent this group. And I want them to hold together as a group and try to get the facts out. Because they don't know anything I'm talking right now. They don't know that ECOMOG is a conglomeration of African leaders who were interested in protecting their own interests. That's why they sent ECOMOG leader here. Simply because their opponents were, in quote, in Liberia with Taylor. That's ECOMOG. What happened with ECOMOG? The Nigerian generals and Ghanaian colonels and whatnot, what they were doing here? Selling arms, selling Liberian cars, looting our gold and diamond and other things, and selling them. What happened when the Americans and Abacha disagreed? And they won't talk, the American led top secret business. The ECOMOG generals and commanders in Liberia were selling arms. They had given, and they were selling to MPFL. They were selling to all the factions. We were buying from them too, because they were selling it, and they didn't realize that these arms were coming back to them, but they were making money. They had no interest. The American or the international community was giving the Nigerians, the ECOMOG, $30 million worth of arms and ammunition. The Nigerians and other generals who were there, no harms meant to any national, but what they were doing is that they were receiving the new arms and selling them under end-user certificates to Arab groups that were fighting other wars. The arms that were destined for Liberia were being sold to other Arab warring groups around the world. And these arms were coming from Rio Tinto in Spain, the Spanish ammunition and manufacturing company. So they could trace the movement. Some of them ended up in Lebanon, others ended up in Syria and whatnot. These were sold under different end-user certificates. The commanders from Nigeria and other places had commands of the arsenal. So they will now go to Makurdi in Nigeria or somewhere in Kaduna or somewhere in Aburi in Ghana and get arms, old weapons from the arsenal and bring it to Liberia. That's why you see most of the bombs that they dropped did not even explode, and some of them we took to Yamoussoukro and other places had made in India, 1966, made in Pakistan, 1967. These were arms that were manufactured for the Biafra-Nigeria war in the 60s, who were in the arsenal that they brought in here to dump on the Liberian people after they sold the fresh arms that were given to them to other warring groups in the Middle East who had the money to pay them. Now when the Americans discovered that, they had a problem with Abacha. When they mentioned it to Abacha, they said that your generals are selling the arms. Abacha said it's not possible. But then they gave him some evidence and he got angry. That's when he changed, I think, on 2 or 3 occasions he changed the field commander and called them back to base and brought in other trusted ones. The trusted ones were the same way. They were dealers. They were dealers. They made a lot of money in Liberia here at the expense of the Liberian people. Of course, they kept some degree of peace. We say, well, thank God for ECOMOG. But these are some of the scenarios, these are some of the things that happen in this country that young people might not know. And those of you who were maybe in the IGNO government pushing ECOMOG did not know that these generals were dealing. They were selling the arms and that they were selling government vehicles and shipping them out. They say one vessel left Monrovia here and went to Nigeria. It was so loaded with cars and things and material things that the vessel sank in the harbor there in Apapa. These were all looted items from Liberia. I didn't say that. It was recorded by Reuters. But some of these things happen because of the involvement and the greed of some of these people. You see, some of these countries also were playing double games. we're angry with Abacha now, so we do not want Abacha to succeed in peacekeeping in Liberia. So what do? We support Yulima a little bit. We strengthen Mr. Taylor a little bit to make sure that Abacha does not succeed in keeping peace in Liberia. But at the same time, they've given Abacha millions of dollars on ECOMOG to ensure that Taylor does not take Monrovia by force of arm. So who is in between there? The Liberian people are suffering. Liberian people are dying. The war is prolonged. You go to a peace conference, the big shots, the doctors and the lawyers and the big shots come over there. Liberian progressives will come in, and when you look, the peace talk will break down because they don't have a stake in it, because they are not part of their accord. They want to be a part of it, or part of something that they did not fight for, or part of something that they are not a part of. And their burning desire to be a part of that prolong most of the peace conferences. Most of them during the conference, they will come and tell you, say, my man, we're on your side. We want to see Taylor. We got to talk to him. These guys are doing the wrong thing over there. But the next minute, you will see them with Sawyer and them on the delegation moving there. He said, but what kind of people are these here? Do you know that there are people in Buchanan, Banga, Ganta, and other places that are dying, that are suffering, and that soldiers are overrunning them and hurting them, and we want to see relief for them? That's why we are here. You came here for a job. If you don't get a job, that means the peace talk must break down. But we have experts on that too. Because whenever we wanted a peace talk to break down, we knew who to send. We knew who to send to the peace conference that we didn't want. Now look at I've given you an idea of some of the regional revolutionary leaders such as Fode Sanko and General Mosquito and General Issa. Now another thing most people don't know, General Issa, who was the second in command in the RUF, he's not even a Sierra Leonean. He's not even a citizen of Sierra Leone. He is from Gambia. He's a Gambian special force that was a bodyguard to Fode Sanko. And he met him only here. He met him maybe in Libya, but he met him only here. Can you imagine that a foreigner in a country is the leader of a RUF with over 150,000 people fighting? A foreigner. It's because of the lack of coordination. Because of the lack of understanding. You don't know who is who. Even in the play, I hear somebody say the other day that the MPFA had, I think that Stewart or somebody asked the question, MPFA had 70-something thousand fighters. Never. MPFA never had 25,000 fighters. The roster never went up to 25,000. But there were a lot of people who had arms, who were not fighters, but they made sure that they had arms. If you consider them as part of the group, then they were. Then they were over 200,000. But actual roster of command structure, military areas, I don't think it exceeded that, because when I went out to transform this war machine into a mass-based political party, I had a roster with me. And every constituency or every division headquarters that I went to, I estimated the number of men from muster. And I have a rough idea from my general concept of the number of people. And I don't think it ever exceeded 25,000. The RUF had over 150 to 200,000 fighters because of the population in Sierra Leone. All the people. Fode Sanko had a very popular revolution, and most of the people from his region and other areas joined his revolution and fought along with him. So the issue of the many transitional governments and the 20 political parties, or in Liberia, I think we got 16 or 17 tribes. You can see that we got about 16 or 17 political parties. It means that every party that one tribe. That's how Liberia is. Liberia is so divided on the line of tribe and interest that every group, every tribe got a political party, and that no other group will support another group. What they did, they thought that in 1980 they were going to eliminate the American Liberians. All the war we fought, we came back. Election time, they elected an American Liberian, Taylor. Law came, they say American Liberian, do that, we have everything. What happened? Election came, they elected who? Another American Liberian, Ellen Sirleaf. So when are we going to have a homogeneous group of indigenous Liberians who claim to be indigenous Liberians, who will stand together for once as one group of people to determine the destiny or the future of their own people? When are you going to have that? Never can you unite from Zamba time. Well, a friend of mine says Zamba had to die before a certain tribe wore traces. That's how bitter the war was in Liberia. But we say these things so that people can understand that the nature, the attitude of Liberians, our response, our overzealous attitude and response to our own brothers and sisters have caused a lot of mayhem, dissatisfaction, discontentment between and amongst our people, because we are responsible for our own decadence. Nobody should tell you that one group of people are responsible, or everybody comes, they take all the problem, they put it on Taylor Hay. Taylor is the one who caused all the trouble. Yeah, Taylor brought the MPFL with the war. But for God's sake, there were 10 other warring factions that came in as a result, prolonged the war. There were foreigners who were operating companies and businesses here, doing their own business, logging companies and concession, operating fully, paying taxes to him, making contributions and all to the various warring factions that they operated under. These are people who feel the crisis too. There were generals and colonels in the country making money as a consequence of the war. There were Liberians going from village to village, from town to town, killing and murdering their own people. There were people who went and killed their brothers and sisters because they had land dispute. Another important thing that causing trouble in Liberia, and we don't realize that. The sons, and this is causing another big economic problem too, and I think our history should record that. The sons and the daughters of wealthy paramount and clan chiefs have abandoned their land in the rural areas and have come to Monrovia fighting over land in the Lake Peninsula. Most of the tribal chiefs and elders in the country were very wealthy people. Most of them in villages and towns, the citizens of those towns and villages worked very hard to send their children to school. The children of the chiefs and elders, send them to school in Monrovia or school in other counties. As soon as they come back, graduate from school and come back, some of them come to Monrovia, rent a room and begin to stay in one room here and start to act like they are poor people. They are the sons and the daughters of the wealthy landowners. They do not get their education and go back to those villages and towns where their parents own thousands of acres of land and help to develop and improve that land, help to transform the natural resources of that land into semi-finished or finished product. Instead of doing that, they come and sit in Monrovia, vacillating, looking for government jobs and whatnot, and leave the heritage of their parents and their villages and discourage the citizens in that area. Most of them, when they come back, instead of even marrying their own tribes, they want to marry an American Liberian woman in Monrovia and go and bring his brother and sister them from Nimba or Bon County to be their slaves, to be their servants. This attitude is very bad. It's appalling. But when you are, the citizens of a constituency fight hard, your father is chief, they help to educate you and whatnot abroad, you come back, instead of going to that land and developing the land and improving the land, you come to Monrovia and put on your race shoe and start going to court for one lot, and you and somebody fighting for years for one lot, and people come and stay here and act like they are poor and they are the unfortunate people in the country, when they are actually the wealthy landowners that have abandoned their constituencies and come to Monrovia in search of what they did not leave here. That has created economic hardship in the country. No longer is food coming from the rural areas. Some of the chiefs were independent people, and you all know Blazo Tue, Tamba Taylor, Kekula Poto. These are owners of big land. And you see most of their children and family around Monrovia fighting over little land and whatnot, when they have hundreds of thousands of acres there of land. I know some of those men are turning in their graves because they see their children draining their constituency into the bottomless pit of degradation from their own hopelessness and carelessness. Another issue that I want to look at is the issue of Liberians believing that anything that is foreign is better. That's why you see in our country, people say they are committed to national development effort and they are committed to change and all that. What has changed? How can a country in 2008 allow foreigners to come into our country as store boys, people who stand behind the counter to give you one tin or tinapa when you buy it? That is why we are in the country. We are so educated and so alert that we have this quality of people here in our country. We give them work permit, we give them resident permit to come in our country and be store boy. A store boy in a country where 90%, 95% of our people are unemployed. We still allow that thing. We should stop this mentality that whatever comes from abroad is better. Or any individual that comes from any white man you see, he's supposed to know book or he's supposed to be clever. I always tell people, when I went to graduate school, I went to school with white people. I went to Switzerland to school. I was not the last in the class. So I don't have no extraordinary regard or extraordinary, I prostrate myself to any white man because his skin white. And that's the problem we got in Liberia. Anybody who see one little white girl or one little white boy vacillating around the country, they begin to follow them and start pointing their finger to their brothers and sisters as though they are inferior. It's not true. I went to school with white people. I was not the last in the class. So I don't feel that every white man is superior to me. And Liberians should stop thinking with that kind of mentality because it is destructive. It is destroying us and affecting us in this country. Now, any little lame dog that come here operating with one little NGO jeep driving around in the village, destroying our youth there, our young girls, following men and women and all that kind of thing there. We call them people that are human beings. They come to Liberia now, they are better. They are the people causing the trouble in this country. They were the people who fueled the crisis. They are the ones who had Liberians fighting against Liberians so that they can benefit. Most of the misinformation that go out in this country here are being given between Liberians and some of the Liberians here who you say important people work for some of these organizations, and they're the ones who are filtering out of this country here all kind of false information and false representation that led this country into pandemonium. They have to keep their jobs. They have to make Liberia look like a hardship place. It's rough here. They're killing people. You go outside Maria of 30 miles, they will cut your throat. I have to go there, so I need extra money. You have to increase the budget every year. They're bringing these monies in, squandering them, and spending them at the expense of the Liberian people. Liberians are not employed. Let us stop this mentality, this overzealous nature of supporting foreigners and other people in our country. I don't say dislike them. I have nothing against foreigners. But sometimes when I tell people, say, oh, the man don't like American. No, that's not true. I have 6 children that are American citizens. I have a daughter in the U.S. Army. I have sons and that are engineers that work for United States government and other places. All my children were educated in the United States. They are American citizens. I didn't say they have green card. I said they were born in America. Because during the early days when I was having my children, they could not have cesarean operation here in the late 70s and 80s. So my wife had to travel to abroad to have children. So my children were born in America. I respect America. I love America. I have property there. I own property there. But by no means do I think that anybody there is more superior to me. And let's destroy that mentality that we have in this country that is keeping us down and causing a lot of chaos and trouble in our country. Now the transitional governments, another group of people that came in. I told you that I work in every transitional government. And I know that the cardinal objective of some of these transitional governments were very straightforward and clear. There were a group of people who came to try to pillage the coffers of the economy of this country. That's all it was. A group of hustlers and called themselves progressive who came in and tore up the economy of this country that today we are still suffering from it. But everybody say, I was not the one that spoiled it, so I'm not the one that's going to fix it. The other issues that we will raise will continue, but I myself want to take a little break now and go to the bathroom and maybe smoke a cigarette, and then we can continue later.